Today I'm going to be building some AI agents that'll hopefully help me save some time in my busy life. I work as a software engineer in Amazon. Starting from this year, a typical day at my work involves me managing multiple work streams at once and talking to 4 agents that do my tasks for me simultaneously. After I come home, I still have a YouTube channel to run, errands to do, and connections in my life that I need to maintain. And on top of that, I want to be able to pick up theater and other creative hobbies, but I simply do not have the time for it. So because of that, in this video, I'm going to be building some agents that'll hopefully help me save some time in my life so that I can free up my time to do other things that I also enjoy doing. And I am hoping that this video could show you the process of how I build it so you can get inspired to build your AI agents as well in your life. However, I've been putting things off for about a month at this point because internally, I feel pressured to build the perfect AI agent from the get-go. I have multiple conversations with Claude at this point, but I just could not start building. So that's when I got reminded of Software Development 101, which is that development is an iterative process. So for today's video, I'm gonna be time boxing myself to 1.5 hours to see if I can build something that works today. I have never filmed a build with me vlog before, so I'm a little bit nervous, but the first thing that I'm gonna do is to do a brainstorming session where I journal all the ideas that an AI agent could potentially help me do, and I'll work on it from there. Okay, I don't think I have anything else on my mind anymore. In this session, I came up with a total of 8 ideas, but I'm gonna let it simmer and decide the best one to build in a couple days. But even after the brainstorming session, it is still really hard to pick something. The reason of that is because when I was trying to formulate my brainstorming list, I was thinking about cool things that it would be really nice to have if I were able to build it, but I don't have a strong desire to use it because they don't solve my pain points in life. So I had to really go back and think about what are some of the things that are so painful in my current process that would be really nice for an AI to handle it for me. And here's what I realized. Right now, the most painful thing is that I can't access AI agents on the go because I don't have a remote control. So even though I can talk to AI agents for as long as I have on my computer, I go back to chatbots like Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT whenever I have a burning question but I don't have access to a computer. For example, if I have a quick question about my diet, wanted to flesh out my thoughts on friendship, or wanted to go over a YouTube idea, I will have to talk to chatbots. But then again, these chatbots, they don't exchange memories. Oftentimes, if I start a new conversation, they have no idea what happened when I talked to the chatbot yesterday. So the problem with memory and context leads to a lot of AI hallucination that could be prevented if I were able to build a knowledge base that summarizes all of our communications so that it provides enough context for the agents. If you're really into agentic tooling, you could probably tell that I'm hinting at something like OpenClaw. But the problem here is that I'm unable to use OpenClaw at this moment because I don't have a server that could be running 24/7. I don't want to invest in a Mac Mini at the moment because I feel like I'm still trying things out, and I don't have a cloud desktop like the way that I do for work, so I'm unable to have something that could run for me 24/7. But then I get reminded of the first principle of software development, that building agents is also an iterative experiment. So that is when I finally decided to scope down and define the scope for today's video and build an MVP, a minimum viable product, for one single skill that I needed the most at the moment, which is expense tracking. As you can see over here, I started a new terminal window. I created a folder called AI Slop, and I'm gonna launch my Claude code from over here. So to begin with, I'm gonna start with building a very simple skill that just reads my bank statements like PDF format or CSV format, whatever format that my bank issues me. I want Claude to write it to a separate CSV file with the data schema that I use for my budget tracker. So let's do that first. If you see me listing the documents that I have in this folder, I have one of my Bank of America statement and one of my city statement. They're both in very different formats. One is a CSV file and the other one is a PDF. So right now, I'm gonna be telling Claude to write a skill that is able to read both of these formats. Can you start by creating a skill that is able to process the data across both of my bank statements and come up with an expenses breakdown following this schema. Schema is just a fancy way of saying the columns for my database. If you've seen my financial reset videos, you can see that on my spreadsheet, I have 6 columns. So I would want Claude to be able to do something similar. So I'm just gonna be pasting the columns over here. That's all I'm gonna do for now and see what Claude comes up with.
Moments later.
Okay, it seems like Claude was able to write the skill itself and come up with a pretty detailed breakdown. But at the same time though, the categories that it gave me is pretty arbitrary and it's not using the categories that I use. So if I plug this back into my spreadsheet is gonna yell at me. And the reason that Claude was not able to categorize it correctly is because I didn't tell Claude about my categories. So now I'm just gonna copy and paste all of my categories, my essentials, my non-essentials, as well as my sinking fund, all of the categories over here. So whatever Claude decides to categorize, it has to be something along the lines of that. So let me do that right now. And now we can see Claude categorizing things and adhering it to our standards. So everything over here looks pretty clean to me. Before we move on to the next step though, let's look at what Claude actually wrote in its skills. So we can see over here, this is what Claude wrote as part of its skills. We can see that the skill over here is not generalized at all. It's very specific to the Bank of America statement as well as the city statement. Whereas in the future, I probably want Claude to be able to read everything in a specific folder instead of very verbatim, just do the Bank of America and do the city. But then moving on, in terms of the categories, everything over here looks decent. I can see it's trying to overfit the data a little bit because some of these keywords are very specific to the restaurants that I tried, but that's okay for now. Otherwise, the skill looks honestly pretty good to me. I typically don't really spend a lot of time fine-tuning the skills from the get-go. What I usually do is if I run into problems, based on the problems, I would decide if it's like a one-off occurrence. If it's a one-off occurrence, then I would probably just fix it up myself. But if it's something that I realized due to the skills being overly specific to when I was trying to build it, I would then talk to Claude to modify the skills. But right now, I think it's fine. I realized so far, Claude just printed it out without outputting into a CSV file. So I'll ask Claude to do that right now. Okay, now as you can see over here, Claude created an expense breakdown for us. So if we take a quick look here, everything over here looks good. One more thing that I realized that isn't good is the nicknames that I uses for my credit cards, and that makes sense because I didn't tell Claude about my credit cards yet. But honestly, from an experimental point of view, this skill looks pretty ready to go for me. So now I just want to organize everything a little bit. If I'm letting Claude to help me run the scripts, then I would probably have multiple sessions and I would probably only launch Claude in this one single folder over and over again. And I want to be able to keep my past expenses while not having it being confused with the tasks that we're doing currently. So now I'm gonna be creating a bunch of folders to organize things. Now, as you can see, I put everything in a folder. I can imagine myself repeating this process probably once or twice every month because I don't want to connect Claude to logging into my bank account because it's sensitive information. So I'm gonna be downloading my CSV or bank statements from each bank account, each credit card by hand, probably dropping it into a folder called statements. It would be under a folder of today's date. I would have a directory under it called statements where I drop all of my statements down. That's when the system is ready for Claude to run. So I would tell Claude to run the expense breakdown skill, and when Claude is done, it exports the CSV file, and I would just have to copy and paste this to my spreadsheet. So let's try it right now. Values only, and all of the format is good. I do have to fix the categories because I'm pretty sure I use lowercase for everything, and in fact I'm already telling Claude to fix it right now, so this should be a non-issue. After everything is sorted out, I would come over, look through each purchase one by one to make sure that it's categorized correctly without having to type every single expense, because right now what I do is I log into all of my accounts, I type in every single expense over here one by one, so that takes a lot of time, and because that is such a friction point, I don't really track my expenses as much as I should be. But yeah, we can see that Claude has already fixed the lowercase problem, but now I need to tell Claude that how the folder works. So I'm gonna be just yapping to Claude for a little bit. this is what I'm telling Claude. I'm pretty sure it's specific enough that Claude is able to follow, but if it's not, I'll just have to be more specific. As you can see, now I taught Claude about the folder structure, and Claude is able to reiterate the process for me. So every time I could just tell Claude to start, to create a new directory where I drop in the statements. Let me tell that to Claude right now. So now inside the settings.json, I was able to create a hook. So every time I open this project, Claude would be able to automatically create a folder, and it would be an empty folder for me to drop everything in. Let me try to restart Claude to see if it works. I just relaunched Claude and I checked back into my folder and I could see today's day written, which is great because that means I don't even have to do the folder creation every time I start a folder. I pulled 2 more PDF files from my bank statements over here, and these are from 2 new banks, so it's not a format that Claude has seen before. So let's try to break down the expenses again to see if it works. It seems like Claude has finished running, so let's take a look at the CSV files. I don't really use these cards a lot, so it's a pretty small file. I'm glad that Claude is able to call out international/large purchases. I use the notes column for myself more as a diary format, so I would prefer to write them myself if I want to make a comment on like a specific experience. Claude calling it out is also pretty nice. I can just change it up manually, since part of the reason that I do a budget review is because I want to look at my expenses line by line to make sure that they're all correct. So I do want to keep a little bit of the manual effort still in it. But this looks pretty good. I actually ran 2 end-to-end tests and I'm pretty happy about what I have so far. Before I started this session, I was hoping to add some Google integrations too, so I could just directly write to my expense breakdown, but I'm starting to rethink that because I still do enjoy the line-by-line experience. So I think this is a working product that I want to start testing with. I waited for 1 or 2 weeks before filming this final portion of the video because I wanted to have the agent to simmer in my head for a little bit before giving you a final review of how I think my agent is and what I think are some of the next steps for me in the future. In between the simmering time, I ran this agent for one time when I was doing my expenses, and I feel like it did a pretty decent job, but then at the same time, there were a couple bugs that happened. I ran a total of my 8 credit card statements, but for some reason, the agent just totally missed out on one of the statements. When I was reviewing it, I was like, wait, I don't see anything spent on food, even though I'm sure I went to one of those restaurants. And that's when I had to let the agent know about it and fix it at the spot. But the turnaround of that cost a lot of extra time. So I added a rule to import all of my credit cards and have the agent do a final check to avoid that from happening in the future. But other than that, I do find the skill to be pretty useful because I have so many credit cards across so many different accounts. I typically spend 30 minutes to handwrite each expense that I have in each credit card statement onto my budget tracker, as well as logging into different accounts. For some reason, those bank apps are the absolute slowest, and I do that 2 or 3 times a month. So that is a decent amount of time spending a pretty mundane task of simply writing down my expenses. After the agent run, I spent 30 minutes total even after fixing the skills, so that is definitely pretty good. I just have to copy and paste it to my final spreadsheet and make a round of review, charge the people for expenses that I cover for, as well as making sure that everything is there. I think that simplified my process by a lot, so I really enjoyed what I have so far. In terms of next steps though, at this point I feel like the minimum viable product works for the expenses tracker. I don't really see anything else that I need to add on top of what I already have. Besides OpenClaw, this one skill is already good enough for 90% of my needs in terms of the expenses tracking space. So the next thing I want to do with agents is actually to build a second brain or a knowledge base. Because I post videos frequently, one thing that I noticed right now is that I output a lot, whereas I don't really have any inputs at all, which is 180 degrees from what I used to do when I was in college. But what I realized is that sometimes I wish to have more intake that I can process, whether it be movies, shows, books, whatever, and have those as inspirations that funnels for my video, which might help my video add more layers. But what's really hard about that is I write pretty detailed notes on my Kobo, but I just forget about it after I read the book. So what I'm trying to do next is to build a knowledge base about all the movie references, book references, and build a skill for AI to remember everything. For example, if I wanted to make a future video on friendship, I would be able to find a lot of the input references that I've seen or notes I've taken in the past that's about friendship. And I feel like that's going to be able to help me so much in terms of getting more organized in my brain. So make sure to let me know in the comments if you wanted to see that video coming, and let me know if you like these types of build with me vlogs, because this is the first time that I've ever tried it, and right now I don't know if it works. So yeah, your feedback is really important to me, and if you watch all the way until here, make sure to like liked this video, and you might enjoy this video over here where I showed you my AI editing agent that saves me 40+ hours every single month. But I'll see you next time. Bye!